The ceasefire is over. Tensions with Iran remain high, but have investors decided to move on? Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Brian Brenberg, along with my co-hosts Taylor Riggs, Dagan McDowell, Jackie DeAngelis, and with us for not 1 but 2 hours, Fox business contributor and entrepreneur. We have Marcus Lemonis is here. Good to see you, sir.
You too.
So talks will continue, even as the U.S. and Iran return to trading fire. President Trump, writing on Truth Social, the Islamic Republic of Iran has asked us to continue talks. We have agreed to do so, but the United States has stated to them, in no uncertain terms, that the ceasefire is over. General Keith Kellogg says it's all about who holds the cards.
Anytime that the Iranians say they're going to kill President Trump, that's my president. Okay, you've now made a threat on my president, our president, and you're going to get resulting, we're going to attack your leaders wherever they are. He's got all the cards in his hand that he wants to play. As long as he realizes these people will not negotiate in the long term, they don't have the cards, and he needs to keep the pressure, put his knee on their neck, and make them give up. If they don't give up, they're going to pay the long-term price.
Marcus, it just doesn't seem like investors care all that much that the ceasefire is over and that we're trading fire with Iran. What do you think?
Well, I think that they're betting on the probability as opposed to what's actually happening. That's the first thing. The second thing is we don't talk a lot about what's happening to oil demand. There's been a lot of oil demand destruction globally. And so in addition to everybody figuring out alternative ways to get around, people are figuring out how to consume less. And when those two things happen, you get a lot of pricing, the opposite of pricing pressure.
Well, Dagan, you've mentioned China. You talk about people or people's republics that have decided to destroy demand. China's the biggie out there right now. So I was thinking about that today, but I was also noticing there's a really interesting supply story as well. There's a couple places that have ramped up oil supply big time, and they weren't on my radar. And one of them is Brazil. So Brazil production has gone way up. UAE production has gone way up. So we don't know what China's going to do with demand, but this story of abundant oil, I think, continues to gain pace here.
Global oil stocks, so stockpiles, posted an increase in June, nearly, I'm quoting Javier Blas, but this is from the International Energy Agency report that came out. This is entirely due to the rising volumes of oil that have been hitting the water. It is the first monthly increase since the war. It comes after stocks fell 360 million barrels. But if you look at what the UAE was doing, and by the way, crude production hit a record high from the UAE of 4.1 million barrels a day in June. And that includes like natural gas liquids and condensates. But it is really astonishing what the UAE has been able to do. But there has been, it makes sense looking as crappy, yeah, I use that word, as the memorandum of understanding was. It makes sense that why that pause happened. And it's to replenish the stockpiles and just get all of that crude oil moving out of the region. And that's exactly what has been happening.
Brian, one thing that I didn't mention is if you really take a look at what's happened in the last 12 months, including Venezuela, and now you're talking about Brazil, it looks like the world is on the way to creating two separate oil economies, what's happening on the east and what's happening on the west. And if you can create this oil production independence on the east, you're also going to rip out a lot of logistical costs. You talk about taking prices down at the pump. It isn't just the barrel. It's the transport. It's everything else that goes along with it. And I think this delay in Iran is actually giving the East a chance to bolster its production, including the U.S.
By the way, Brazil held the climate conference late last year, you know, like the one where you're supposed to save the environment, and now they cranked up oil production. Funny how reality has a way of intruding on conferences, Jackie.
Can I add one bit to this? CENTCOM reiterating that the Strait of Hormuz is not controlled by Iran, so that's been your big thing. As long as the strait stays open, oil prices should be range bound to a certain degree, and that's exactly what you're seeing here. Now, it's hard to know exactly what's happening there because the information is conflicting, but you got to believe what they're saying. And our understanding is that oil is moving, and that is why the price hasn't moved.
I'm glad you brought that up because they also said they've been reiterating I think they call it the southern route through Hormuz is
preferred
open.
route?
We're watching it. We control it. That's the Omani side route.
Yeah.
In other words, what they're doing, Taylor, is it seems like we're being more explicit now about saying we're not just going to say we control Hormuz, but we're going to show you that we do, and we're going to show you through the ships coming through. I know the ships have gone down a little bit in recent days, but it hasn't stopped. So again, I ask about investors here. To me, what it looks like is investors are saying we know the ultimate outcome economically. Even in the short term, we don't know how all the skirmishing is going to play out. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think investors right now are looking at the economics and saying this eventually will have to shake out one way or the other. And I think it's pretty hard to bet against the U.S., especially when you're going up against Iran. Brian, I also come today, we've been trying to figure out, the markets, are they sort of looking through this? Are they excited about earnings season? We've got one big earnings today that we'll talk about in the next hour. But I think this is a market that also is looking at really strong fundamentals. I have my great data point that I come with every Friday. Not you, Mish, Brian.
Oh, thank
that was a
goodness.
pop quiz. Another one where Bank of America tracks from their customers what is being deposited, what's going out, regionally, where they're seeing pockets of increase or not. And some of the best news is that they're seeing that total credit and debit card spending is up 6.3% year over year in June, the strongest growth that they haven't seen in 4 years. Given that gas prices are falling in June, they think that this is entirely a discretionary story, not crowding out spending because of high gas prices driving everything, that it's, discretionary. Here's the even better news. In June, lower income household after-tax wage growth rose above that of middle income households. So let's talk about the numbers. Lower income household after-tax wage growth was up 4.1% in June year over year, the highest since July of 2023. That number for middle income households, 3.4%. They've talked again, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, they continue to see a narrowing of the K-shaped economy, where lower income households are starting to see wage growth and spending that is catching up. So the good news is this is an economy that originally we were saying, oh, it's all the high income earners. High income is propping up everyone else. Lower income isn't participating. This sort of dispels that. Now we can talk about different data points, and I know, Marcus, maybe you're looking at me skeptically and thinking, okay, but it's all being put on the credit card, and maybe that isn't real. But these numbers of after-tax wage growth, and maybe some of it's the big, beautiful bill, where you've changed your deductions, and so your take-home pay is higher, because for middle and lower-income Americans, there were some improvements in the one big, beautiful bill. Maybe that's starting to all come in this year. So the good news is that's strong fundamentals. I'm getting big skepticism looks.
Can I stir the skepticism?
Look at his face.
So yesterday we were having this debate about, we did Pepsi and Costco, and we're like, oh my gosh, people aren't buying Pepsi products as much. Does this mean the consumer's weak? Or Costco said, was it gasoline demand yesterday or something? They said we were seeing some stress. Anyway, we thought, oh my gosh, is the consumer falling apart? Then you bring this data and it says, no, actually their low-end incomes are rising and spending is strong. I don't know. How do you read these different data points in the economy? I mean, you're running a business, so you actually got to figure out how's my consumer doing.
They didn't bifurcate the difference between the credit and the debit spend. That's really important to me, because one is piling on debt and one is just having money come out of my account. And in a cashless environment, I understand that. I don't know where we would be able to find those numbers, but it is true that people are spending. People are traveling. The malls are packed. Gas wasn't less expensive a few weeks ago. It's better today, but the restaurants are full. You went on vacation. You saw people at the hotel. I just hope that people aren't just starting to stockpile debt again. I don't think that's the case. I do buy off on your thesis that the one big beautiful bill changes in the deductions have netted people a few more dollars in their paycheck. And usually if people net 2, they spend 4. And that's my concern.
Interesting.
Can I just real quickly, I just want to bring this up because it's kind of part of the whole conversation on Iran. This assassination thing going on, Jackie. I wonder how much you think that matters in terms of how the U.S. voters, citizens are thinking about what's happening with Iran. and what our posture to that whole region and to that particular issue should be. It became very real. And I mean, this is a president who's had attempts on his life, but now we're kind of getting like this state-sponsored thing. And I'm just curious what you make of that.
Well, to answer your first question about how people in America feel about it, there are people on the left that have been happy that attempts have been made on the president's life. That's a fact. And so that's unfortunate. I do think his supporters obviously take this very seriously, and that's the kind of climate that we live in here in the United States. I'm not saying everyone on the left, but there were many people, and people who have said to me anecdotally that maybe we would be better off if President Trump wasn't here, which is disgusting.
Wow.
But that kind of language and
totally.
that kind of conversation goes on. So that's number one. Number two, the kill plot was shot down by the president with respect to it being any kind of a fresh intelligence, that they were coming after him in some way that they haven't already before. We've known that they've been coming after him since 2020, since the assassination of Soleimani.
Yep.
And so this isn't really new news. I actually think he is so graceful, given the environment, given the attempts on his life, the way he takes this in stride. If you look at the New York Post article, they're doing their funeral stuff, right? And they're using this funeral of the supreme leader as a way to bolster nationalism, at least of those on the ground in Iran who do support them. And you see these banners. We will kill Trump, it says. The other one, there will be blood. Hey, Trump, we will kill you. These pictures are staggering. Crowds and crowds of people holding up these huge banners. But I think that for anybody in this country who is questioning whether the leadership there and also its support that is fanatical, religious, they're crazy, as he has said before. And so, so he gets it. He understands the risks. And he has also said that he has left very explicit instructions. Should somebody make an attempt on his life, be successful at it, should it be the Iranians, this country will wipe them out.
Yeah. I think your point is so good. He shows incredible poise in these moments. I am astounded by the way he carries himself in the midst of these kinds of threats. Good stuff.